Thanks to all of you who are on this Zoom meeting along with us. Some of you have checked in by entering your name in the chat box. There are some of you who were able to see on the screen. And I have to say that Jeannie Harmon is here with me, as is Andy Wolf, and I am just so reminded, I believe that it's a Far Side cartoon about being an old dog, and this is a new trick. And so I think this is just one of those great learning opportunities where we can also pre-forgive each other if there are any glitches along the way as we get ourselves going. But we're pretty darn excited about doing this today. If you haven't signed in and entered that you have joined us, we would love that. It looks like we've got 14 participants here with us this morning. Some of whom I can see on the screen, and we know that Lisa Gredvig from Union Gap has joined us by way of telephone. Jeannie and Mike, who you both know, and I will help to facilitate this next hour. But really, when we say facilitate, we do mean we want everybody else to join in along with us as we go, so that it really is, to the best degree possible, allows us to interact with one another. Doesn't take you out of your school district, doesn't take you away for another day, but allows us to touch on those topics that we think were of import to you, that we wanted to follow up with you about, and then get us on the road for preparing for the next time that we meet in person. So, given the fact that we know each other well by this point, if there are any difficulties, if you've got questions, either I'm going to suggest you jump in there and or that you add them into the chat box along the way. I'm going to see if I can, you should be seeing the PowerPoint right now if all is going well. But you should also be able to see that I toggled over the participants link. And just to give an idea, Frank is with us, James is with us, Lisa is with us, Mary Seawright, I went a little too fast. Jamie is here with us, Mary Beth Tack, Pete Peterson, Sue Anderson from OSPI has joined us from Dallas to be able to hear a lot of our conversation as well as chime in along the way. Whitney is with us, Whitney Meisner, Chris Sweeting, Will Nelson, and if I've missed anybody, why don't you either give a holler or add your name into the chat box. So we've got an hour set aside for ourselves. If all goes well, I correctly hit the record button and we're recording this for you to refer back to if you'd like to along the way. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Mike for a little bit.
Great. Great. Thanks, Helene. Great to see everybody on the side of my screen. So thanks for being here. This is as Helene said, a new learning for all of us. One of the pieces that we shared in our day together was talking about personality tests and really to getting to know our board as a way to kind of build foundation and understanding of our board, where they're coming from, and a way of building a team. Another activity or strategy that we thought we would share just really quickly this morning is really talking about values. And I referenced this book at our time together, The Leadership Challenge, which is Kruzes and Posner. And in this book, there's a big section on values. And one of the pieces that in the values, it talks about if in order to get to shared values, everybody needs to kind of define what their individual values are first. And so what I've done for you is, possibly a way of thinking, and is something that we have done with both our leadership team members, meaning all of our principals, as a way for them to think about it and building for their schools. But we've also done this with our board of directors. So what I provided for you today is a two-page excerpt from the Leadership Challenge around clarifying values. And then, Helene, if you'll click, or go ahead and do that. So it's just a real simple end of chapter around clarifying values from that piece. And the reason that I share this this page example is, and I'll share another example later in my talk, is when I'm working with my board of directors or my leadership team, really trying to root whatever the activity or strategy we're doing in some type of grounding, research, or book. So there's a reason. So you're not like doing a values activity out of the blue without some type of context or grounding embedded in research. So thanks, Celine. So the piece that we did was a very simple one, which is the next slide, shows an example of a values exercise strategy. And this comes from Taproot. And so there's a link that Helene will go to that will show you this activity. And it's just a pretty simple activity, and it doesn't take too long, but it is eye-opening in what individuals value in a quick exercise. So that it will share all of that information about how to do that. And then there's the trait piece. I don't know if this document, Helene, has the trait. If you scroll down, it has those words, and the simple beginning of this really just has you circle what we did. They say write it down, but the worksheet that we've attached to this, we just had people circle the ones that resonate with you, right away. So you just kind of circle all of those, and then you do kind of a winnowing, narrowing process. So after you've circled all of those, you then begin to group those into categories, and then from those groups, you pick one. And then what we've done is just kind of a simple share out at a table, really begin to understand why people in that moment chose those different words. And we have just found simple little 10, 15-minute exercises brings us together at a team in a different way. So then when we deal with the hard conversations within our school district or that may become contentious, we're grounded in our individual values, which then leads us to when we want to develop shared values. So just another resource that maybe at the right time in the right moment might become helpful for you with your board or with your leadership team, with the idea that maybe the leadership team or principals can work with staff. And of course, establishing those shared values is right within the evaluation process as well. So I will pause. But that's the one piece that we just wanted to share. There's links at the end of this that will go right to the WASA website that will give you those two documents ready to use for you and your buildings.
Right, thanks for mentioning that, Mike, because the PowerPoint is also there, and the short link is WASA website, and then you do /ECSA, and we'll have a slide. We'll know for next time to put that slide up front that tells you where you'll find the resources, but everything is there for you should you want to use that. Mike, should we take a second to see if anybody has any questions about an activity like that, or comment?
Yeah, if there's a different one that they may have used that could expand our thinking around this or anything, absolutely.
This is Whitney. I have one that I can dig out. I went to a pre-session at the summer conference last year, and the key question was, there were two key questions. What are our core values, and what causes us to act outside our core values sometime? And she led us through an activity that explored that question. And I did that with our whole staff this fall at our Welcome Back In service. And it was pretty awesome. I don't have it right in front of me, but I'll share it with you.
That would be great, because I think you mentioned that to me when I sat beside you a month ago, and that resonated with me. So thank you. All right. All right. Hopefully that was helpful to some extent for you.
Okay. So the next slide. Thank you. The next slide. This should look familiar to you because Helene sent these questions out before the WASDA gathering to have you begin to think about some of these things to get prepared for going to WASDA. As you're experiencing, it's a very important connecting time with the board. So we're curious to know about how it went. And so we're going to talk about a couple of things around this. The first is about those board relationships and what happened. Go ahead and do the next slide. Thanks. And so we're hoping that some of you will be able to, would be willing to volunteer something important that happened during the trip over there. Sometimes the important things happen in the car, sometimes they happen at the meeting, sometimes they happen at the dinner or the events after the dinner or the drive home. So was there some new insight you got into a piece of boardsmanship or a new relationship, a breakthrough in a relationship, or something that deepened a partnership that was already existing? And we know that several of you were there, so I'll pause and see if somebody wants to volunteer. Otherwise, I'll call on somebody. Okay, Mary Beth, you're it. Well, what did you learn?
I think I'm unmuted.
You are now.
Okay, sounds great. It was a great opportunity. I used those questions as a guide. We met as a team. We came at different times. I went to the law part and then the law conference day, and then the board met me that evening. We looked through that and we had our strategic plan in front of us, and we then divvied up the sessions. And then each, in the evenings, we would debrief on what were our takeaways. But I did set the stage at the very beginning of, we'll walk and we'll hear a lot of great ideas, but our goal is to walk away with one idea as a team to implement when we return. And then following that, on Monday, we had a board work session where we had the public, it was a public work session where we shared, each of us shared our insights and then shared our one item.
Did you find some commonality in those items, or were they all over the place?
They were all over the place, but our one common one was pretty easy to land on.
Oh, good. All right. You want to share it?
Yes, it was, we, passed a $150 million bond. And so it's really that post-bond communication. So that was one of the sessions that we attended. And so just refining our work around that.
Perfect. Perfect.
So I really appreciated those questions and kind of setting the stage. So thank you for that.
Great. Okay, who'd like to go next? Hey, Rich Staley. I see you. Yeah. Would you tell us a little bit about your board relationship work?
I didn't go to WASDA,
right.
So I don't have a WASDA story.
But how are things going this fall?
Good. I think I think one of the things that our board's focused on this year a lot is trying to create community partnerships. And so one of the things we did at our retreat in the summer was identify who those folks are. So we've been bringing in the city or the Chamber of Commerce or the clergy in town or whoever it may be, and trying to create relationships with different community folks. And we it's a pretty simple agenda with regards to putting much together. We just kind of talk about what the vision and the goal of the board is and some of the accomplishments that the district's made, and then give that other group an opportunity to talk about what they're doing. And then we look for those opportunities where some of those activities can mesh. And that's been a really positive thing that we've done this fall thus far. And we have 3 or 4 more planned for the rest of the year at our workshops. And so that's how we're spending, it's usually about half an hour or so that we spend with those community folks, and usually real positive work that comes out of that.
That's great. So I'm going to ask the same question. Does that seem to be helping your ideas and your goals converge, or is it bringing more diversity into the board's thinking?
It probably brings more diversity into the thinking. It's helping them think more broadly. I think one of the things I saw last year was we had so many internal challenges that tended to be the focus of where the board was, and this has helped broaden that so that it's more community-based, what their thought process is, and being more aware of perception of different decisions versus really thinking a lot more internally. I think that was my goal behind working through that work.
Great, thank you. That's a good hint. Thanks. Someone else?
This is Lisa.
Yes, hi.
Probably the biggest thing for me, my first year last year, was that relationship building with the board. Even though I had a relationship with them because I had been here 9 years prior as the principal, but I think what's turned this year is because we finally got that relationship and under control and all is well there. But this year it just became more of looking at long-term planning and really what our goals were, because of we've had such a hard bargain. My board actually did not adopt the TA 2 weeks ago, which my understanding is completely unheard of. I've been in pretty much, hell for a year, but as it relates to the board and goals, I got them to do a long-term goal this year. And so we've had one work session and got everything around, because our bond's going to be pretty much done in 5 years. And I need another gym bad. And so there were a few things, and I have a relationship with the city manager, which has been really good, the zone residential. So now I'm kind of concerned if I might need a high school. So as a K-8 district, so I've basically just created more, I don't know what we would call it at this point. But really what the communication piece, which was a big goal for us last year, we've continued into this year, but now it's gotten to, especially after WASDA, one of my board members went to the open meetings workshop. And because of everything that's been going on here around bargaining, I have a feeling that that's going to be on the table at a board meeting very soon. So I've got that's coming. I know it's coming. So I just don't know when.
What can I ask? What's coming? You mean the topic of Open Public Meeting Act?
Oh no, he's been very clear that he wants the policy in place. So because apparently a lot of union members have been contacting them about the fact that the union hasn't been communicating with their members. And so I think he thinks he can fix that this way. But he's almost came right out and said it basically is that he wants it. So, and I think that he'll be able to push that through with the board.
So we wrote that down. We're keeping track of kind of things we'll think about talking about in February. We wrote that one down for sure. It sounds like you've got been facing some serious challenges there. So we hope to have some good ideas, good news Good news from you in a couple of months when we get together. Let's do one more. Somebody else? Mary Seawright, I'm going to pick on you. Well, that's the advantage, of course. It's not a ninth grade classroom, so people can't ignore me. Mary, are you there? Okay. How about Chris Sweeting? I see Chris in there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I will say that for this conference, I had two board members that we went together. One was a 20-year board member. The other one was brand new, had only been in a year. And so that part was good, that there could be the combination of the two generations at the workshop. It would have been great if all board members could be there. Next year in Bellevue, we plan to do that. But I think the three of us went to the open bargaining session together, and that was good. We could, sit there and the questions that we asked were right on for what we need. And then afterwards we debriefed together, the three of us, and then we came back and debriefed in a closed session with the other board members. So that was good. That was unifying. And I think our approach to how we selected the sessions that we attended it aligned well with what we had said we would do for our professional development. We had a meeting earlier this year in October to confirm, our approach to professional development this year. And we said that we wanted to be very intentional when we attended any event about the topics that we would go to, that they would align with our strategic directions and our plan. And so the three of us did that, and that went well. So overall, I thought we learned a lot and also had fun, driving over. Well, one of the board members drove over with me, one flew, but it was a good time to be together. And I guess the insight, it's not really an insight, but one of the things is we all three realized and confirmed how important it is to stay connected and be networked.
Gotcha. That sounds great. So Mike, this moves perfectly, I think, into your next slide. Whoops, except there we go. About linking what you're doing with the board to your strategic plan.
Right. Thank you for sharing all of those insights. Where I think the critical piece for us to dive deep is, I would love to take almost the case study of what Lisa's experiencing. And, we have 20 people on right now. I would love to know what the strategy might be around that. And Lisa, I don't know all of the circumstances, but one of the things that I feel like I've learned in the 12 years now that I've been superintendent is to go in, lean into whatever the situation is, and having not waiting because I've had where a single board member may bring something forward and you think it's going to go through. If you think it's going to go through anyway, then how do you, whether you work with legal counsel or work with your policy, bring it to where you're leading it and not having a single board member lead it. So I don't, like I said, I don't know all of the circumstances, but that's the type of conversation that I learned so much from all of you in terms of the leadership and navigation of a situation. So I'm really intrigued by what you're going to experience, and I would love to know maybe at our next time how you have how you chose to lead it, and then what actually came forward, because what I find sometimes really good things happen as a result of the circumstances that you
I'm not afraid of it, and I'm not shying away from it. My biggest issue was, just like the previous person stated, was what I was going to go with him. I broke my ankle in Spokane the night before.
Oh my goodness.
So I was literally in the hotel for a day until I could actually put any weight on it. And so that was the biggest issue, is that I wasn't able to hear the same information that he was. And we did the same thing, is that we went through the agenda all together to see who was going to go where and obviously I knew where I needed to attend with other people. So yeah, it was just it was just one of those things.
Right, right. Yeah. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I would be anxious to hear that, because I think that's where the critical part of leading and how do you know how to navigate is going to be critical. So I just threw some questions up that you really have discussed, many, shared. Mary Beth talked about bringing ideas back from the conference, and I've heard the strategy of bringing one piece back, and that worked for a little bit for me. And then as I've become more the longevity of 12 years, trying to change things up and not doing the same thing year after year. And where our board has moved to, just to give an example of what we just experienced, again, with the hope that maybe it resonates and you can tweak it and take it. But our board actually all kind of takes little notes for each of the sessions that they attend, and they turn them in. So at last night's, we had a work study. So the work study following WASDA conferences, they share all of their different ideas and put it into a matrix of pieces. And what they allow me to do is put some general themes to, here's the general theme of what I have, what I believe that you've learned in the different sessions that you attended. And again, having the trust at this point in my relationship and with the current board that I have, they allow me to take that and then move it forward. And we do the conversation publicly in the board study, so our whole cabinet hears that as well. But for example, last night, two major themes came out. The first one was we went to a pre-session, which was John Norland and OSPI, and then Freeman, Superintendent Randy, as well as his board of directors. And that was the best session I think I've ever attended on safety for me, and because it was rooted in a different manner. So instead of OSBI taking the lead around, here's your safety manual that you need to do and you need to put out, it was rooted in John Norland of all the different partnerships and relationships that you have in your community are really critically important. And then OSPI shared, well, here's the manual that you need to do. And then Freeman came on and said, we did the manual, we had the full manual of OSPI that requires in terms of emergency situation. But the big piece is, even though we had that and we followed it to a T, it was the relationships that we had with our core responders, our city government, that really helped nudge us through that horrific active shooter. And regrounding that language was a huge takeaway. So that was one piece, because we've been working on that within our system, as we all are, in terms of emergency drills and how those are changing, and working with run, hide, fight language and how to get staff comfortable with that type of language within our system, and doing tabletop exercises. So that was rooted differently. And we just recently had a joint school board, and we have two cities, the city of Black Diamond, city of Enumclaw. We had one joint meeting together at the beginning of November. It provided a stamp of why we did that meeting in a different way, which I can then articulate to my staff and community of that. And then the other piece that all the board went to, that was a big theme, was around after high school planning and career and apprenticeships and all of that. We don't have that as clearly articulated in our strategic plan, and in terms of that came out at dinner time conversations of how might we do that. So we moved forward, adjusting our strategic plan, even in the moment right now, of not saying that we have a 5-year static strategic plan, but we have this ever evolving strategic plan to, if we see areas of that we can shift things. And so from this huge matrix, they've allowed me to synthesize, and then what came out was that's exactly what we as a team wanted to move forward. So it was, instead of individual incidences or individual issues from an individual board member, here's a way to synthesize pieces. And for me, I couldn't have done that probably in my first or second year, but with time and doing some of that values activities and personalities and who we are, in building levels of trust, we're able to kind of move that into strategic initiatives and really making better use of that WASDA conference, which still is probably, as you and I know, not the most ideal professional learning. So we can probably agree that going to a conference, hearing keynote speakers and hearing this eclectic whole bunch of breakout sessions that don't tie to one another, probably not the best professional development. But how do we, I feel like we've kind of maybe arrived a little better as a system here in the Enumclaw by taking that eclectic insights and then synthesizing what it could mean for Enumclaw, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my first two arrows.
Thanks.
And then,
We're going
go
to move
ahead.
on to the next slide, I think. Yeah?
Sure.
Yep.
So the piece on this slide is I really tried to think through any way I can honor our board and be proactive with them. And so just to be thinking, and depending on who your 5 board members are and student representatives, if you have them, do you do anything over the holidays in terms of nudging them and their thinking, and also providing a sense of value. So what Britt and I, my wife and I, have done for our board this year is we purchased the book Joyful, which is a book on kind of you can look it up on Amazon, but it's a kind of a book on happiness and building, having that self-happiness and trying to be the best person that you could be. So it's a great new book. I think it was released in September. So that's what they will receive at the end of the year, as a, just a end of calendar year type of acknowledgement, and as an FYI. And then moving forward, January, of course, is Board Appreciation Month. Are there things that you want to put in place around that? And then quickly on the heels of that is the legislative conference and making sure that you have all the things that you had set up for WASDA. Are you attending? And then what are you doing? And what our board has really appreciated is we market ourselves in a packet we have 2 legislative districts. Our district is split in 2. So we have the 5th and the 31st legislative district. So we make 6 packets of, here is all good information about the Enumclaw School District. So anytime we can get that to them, we make packets. And if we don't meet with our legislators, we give them to their assistant out front of their office. So I'll pause there, and any other insights, I may have forgotten a whole bunch before the next time we meet, but it's just kind of keeping yourself ahead in terms of building those board connections and relationships. A lot of people are muted, so. All right.
Mike just gave a lot of information about both closing out for those of you who did attend WASDA, and in some cases, board members have attended WASDA without you being there with them. So it's closing out WASDA, closing out the school year, looking forward to the next month, getting prepared because the WASO, WASDA, WASBO Legislative Conference. You've all probably seen that registration has already opened for that. So it will be your next opportunity. So I do want to have a pause here. We did this kind of brainstorming of all the things that as an early career superintendent, you might be thinking about for any one of those pieces between, end of November, December, January into early February. So for me, for example, I wonder, so Mike, when you purchase the book, Joyful, for your board members, do you do that personally?
I do. I do. It's just my comfort level. So I'm pretty, I'm pretty careful about those types of things. And right. Small town, keep myself completely clean, even though it's a nominal, falls within policy. It could be a board study, but because we're not officially doing it as a board study, that's what I do.
So I don't know, those are the kinds of things that come to my mind. I know that in a past administrative role, the handling of if anybody wanted alcohol during a meal and how to handle things like that. And so I'm guessing that you may have all crossed that bridge already or thought about it, but are there any of those intricacies that are worth us chatting about now? So let me pause again and see if anybody's got any of those wonderings.
I actually have a question because I am not going to be able, I think, to attend the Day on the Hill. And so my question would be, if you're not able to be there and support your board members who have a strong passion to attend, what do you do to set them up to be successful?
That's a great question, Lauren. So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in and give their thinking about it. If you're facing that, I think we can give you from our perspective what might be some things you'd want to do. But let's see if anybody else has thoughts about that.
That's why we do the packet. I'll jump first. And so it's really our Enumclaw School District story. So, and it's just a couple sheets, gives our here's our priorities as a system and stories behind those priorities. And oftentimes it's done in photos and captions because that captivates the story better than a whole bunch of text, if that helps. And so if you're not there, at least if they have that, the message that's being delivered to at least the legislative assistant and to the person. So that would be one piece. And that's why we do that.
Do you sit down with the board members who are attending then and give them basically their script or work with them to develop the script?
That's a great question. Not necessarily a script, but we do the school board meeting prior to the legislative conference. I have the packets ready made because it's not that packet is as good for our legislators as it is for our board members who go out into the community, who may be members of Rotary, who may be members of the Chamber of Commerce. They now have broader talking points beyond the legislators, but right here within our community. So I find time spent on creating that little Enumclaw School District packet tied to, connected to the WASA packet, of course, ripples even more so in our community than even in Olympia, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Are there others who are going to be in the same position as Lauren? And whether with them or not on the Day in the Hill, how might you be preparing your board members? Okay, I'm really trying to practice Madeline Hunter's wait time, but I'm gonna move along. Frank asks the question about whether or not you're able to share that packet, Mike, and so that would be great. And Whitney's earlier idea that she had of a shared activity weekend, we'd be thrilled to load those on to that same resource as part of our website. So anything that you've got coming on up, let's just put all of those resources there for us to share among ourselves. Just to close that out, if you're able to be at the Sunday part of the conference, there will be the hot topics that Dan Steele and Jessica Vavris will go over. And there's a long form to that, and there's a short form to platforms and what are the commonalities among the three associations. And that in so many ways, for so many, really helps to form the script. And then, as Mike says, personalizing it to your particular situation. And really, I think that is a matter of a sit down and getting, together on what the main points are. Sometimes people have their own personal favorites and will be much stronger than that. So the degree to which you're aware of what what and how people will share their feelings is a good piece. Okay, I'm going to move on. Whoopsie.
Helene?
In the interest of time, and you know, one of the things, did somebody want to jump in? Go ahead, Mike.
I think it's James, right?
Yeah, it's James. Sorry, I'm actually interested, if it won't take too long, to hear for those of the superintendents who have been in the role, what have you done, if anything, over the holiday in appreciation or in anticipation of January Appreciation Month? Because, as you know, I can think of some things that I don't know necessarily they're appropriate, or that they may, you know, I'm just kind of curious of what other people have done.
So this is Whitney. Last year and this year, I'm taking the board and their spouses out to dinner. And it's a really nice way. We just do it after the December board meeting. It's a nice way to spend time with getting to know them as people with their spouses, so that the spouses are included. For board appreciation, last year I put the call out to everybody, and still in our boardroom today, we have posters from the preschool, the elementary, the Braves Club, transportation office. It's just beautifully decorated with personalized notes. And I gave them a small gift. I can't remember exactly what it was last year, just a little appreciation personally from me. But when we came into the board meeting in January, their desks, the tables where they sit, were just covered with cards and little treats and chocolates.
Oh, great.
So it really is just, for me, I just put out the call and say, hey, it's the month to appreciate the board.
Great, thank you.
In Renton, I haven't done a lot in terms of the holiday season, but for January, we have some things that are standard. So all of the schools put up appreciation for the board on their reader boards, things like that. They also will write cards to the board from each of the schools and students. And then the cabinet, we prepare gift baskets for each of the board members that are on their in their chairs when they come in at the board meeting. We do board meetings in some of our schools, and so it's the one that's in a school in January we'll actually do the recognition then.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I share just one? This wasn't for board, but I'm telling you that the last 2 years I've done two different things. And we're a smaller district, so Damien, you're large on this, but 2 years ago, I hand wrote a note to the spouse of all of our leaders and put it in the mail to them, thanking them for putting up with the long hours and all of that. I'm telling you, that was the best thing I could have done. And it wasn't necessarily a huge number of sentences, but the best thing. And then the following year, last year, I wrote, you know, because we have 8 buildings, and, you know, so it was about, with assistant principals, I have about 13, 14, and then cabinet, so about 19 total. I listened, and, you know, sometimes they talk about a grandma or a mom or a dad, and I wrote to those people as their Christmas gift, you know, so it was kind of a holiday gift, so to speak, of what can I do for them, not buying them something, but to handwrite the note. That was one of the best feedback pieces. So no cost of money, but a handwritten note to the spouses or a significant person in the life of an administrator. You could do the same thing with your board. So.
Right. Great, thank you.
I didn't do anything extremely amazing in terms of holidays, but I find that it's the handwritten notes that go a long way. And so what I did last year was I found some holiday cards, and then I wrote some sentiments in each one, and then I had my whole cabinet sign them. And that went quite a long way for the holidays. And then for board appreciation, it's very similar, I think, to what Whitney shared and Damien. I've asked all of our building principals to please work with whether it's art teachers or ASB or art docents, to create something that can be visually hung in the boardroom for the month of January. And then we have one board meeting a month is hosted off-site. And so I'm working with the principal of the off-site school in January to ensure the reader board says, thank you, board, for your service, Board Appreciation Month, and that we call out their service as part of that school connections meeting.
Great.
So that's
Thank you.
another great area that should there be more ideas that are brainstormed, please do feel free to add. I think that if you send that as an email, we can compile any ideas that you have and then put it into some way that makes some sense on our website for any ideas, or we just hit a reply all to those of you who participate in the Early Career Superintendent Academy. So thanks for all of those ideas. And so I'm going to move us forward a bit and see where this conversation takes us to. Part of our work is really in helping to develop effective leaders within your own settings. And at our last meeting, we presented to you a document that OSPI had created about putting the G in TPEP, as well as looking at some new information about, well, relatively new information about focused evaluations. And so one of the areas that we're interested in having a conversation about is, what have you done or are you thinking of doing as we move, believe it or not, into the calendar year 2019, about moving your evaluation system forward for either your teachers or your principals, although we tended to focus more about principals, but we're curious about either of those two areas, as well as perhaps refocusing or focusing efforts on growth, which is the G in TPEP. And then another item to think about is, where might you like to be as we move into spring? So any or all of those questions, what thoughts have you had? What actions have you taken since last we met and you might have been introduced to those documents or entered those into your own thinking?
Lisa, I think you're not muted.
No, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
Okay, great. So I can use the Jeannie Harmon approach of volunteering you to share about what thinking you may, or actions you may have taken. And Lauren, you've been just smiling there. So I'm curious about what you might be thinking.
Sure. So what I'm smiling because the reason I was late to this call is that I don't know what the history has been here. I don't have long legs in this community, but we're getting very intentional in shepherding our principal cadre through a lot of work on how to have the conversation, and everything from just mechanics to what that looks and feels like, to tabletop scenarios, to today we gave them some situations that are very commonplace at all kinds of schools and had them go through and break it down to what are the challenges with this, what would you do, and then how would you follow up with it as you move forward in time. There's a real fear factor for having the harder conversations. We're doing that for two reasons. One is we are aware we have underperforming staff and faculty that we have got to address. The other one is we hired about 60 teachers this year, so we have a huge group who are on provisional. And the history here has been, once someone's in, they're just kind of in, and I'm challenging the system to absolutely grow, care for, and support our teachers. And we also need to be able to put our hand on our heart to our kids and our community and say every single child in this system is getting an outstanding experience every day. And if you can't do that, that is a sign that a conversation needs to happen. And it can be support conversation, it can be counsel out, it can be working the process, but we have not, we had 402, I think, on our CERT staff roles last year, and we had 4 marked basic. And I have a hard time believing that that is a true indicator of the performance of our faculty. So we've just not been very courageous around that. I will give my leadership team at the district level huge amounts of credit, because last year we started the conversation at that level for principals, and they did go out and mark basic quite a bit, and fairly, and with ample evidence. But it has we're trying to shift the narrative around basic being something that means you're about to be done to this is an area that you need to double down on and grow as a professional. And we're here to support that, and we want to see you succeed. But we also can't turn a blind eye when we know that something isn't happening that needs to happen. So it is a huge cultural shift. It takes a lot of care you have to kind of put that care component around all of it every step of the way. But we are really intentionally talking about that. So that's why I was smiling, because I mean, we're sweating it out hard up here in North Kitsap and trying to change the culture around holding people accountable for doing the job, and supporting them and caring about them and enjoying them. And also at the end of the day, making sure our outcomes for our kids are absolutely what they need to be. Just this, as I was right before I walked in here, I told our principals, our 8-year-olds don't get to do 3rd grade again. They don't. This is their one shot. And it's on us to make sure that their one shot is successful. And the number one way we do that is to have a quality person in that classroom with them. Elaine, you're muted.
Okay, I'll
No,
share.
I'm only kidding. So let's hear. I know that there are others, and I'm not looking at you live in your offices, but I want to turn to some others who we haven't heard from yet. So anybody we haven't yet heard from that would love to chime in with anything about steps you're taking, approaches, focus on growth?
Well, I've shared before, but earlier in the session, but I'll share a little bit. This is Mary Beth from Kelso. And so just piggyback on Lauren, we're having those same conversations also around that, you know, kind of that stigma around basic is not okay. But our rubric is the depth of it, you know, and again, our profession is very complicated. You know, it's a complicated and sophisticated act to teach, and we want the very best in front of our students. So I agree with Lauren. The one thing that I took from our last session a couple months ago was in the area of cabinet visits. And I know somebody shared that, and you know, we've rolled that out. We have cabinet and 1 or 2 board members kind of tying that through line from their SIT plan and the work strategic plan to SIT plan to conversations 3 times throughout the year. And so actually the feedback from principals, they're very excited about the work. They feel like that's a connection closer to from just their supervisor. And so I put together some guiding questions, and so that they know exactly that they're not putting together this big PowerPoint or putting together this big folder of data, but it's about the conversation. It's about the crucial courageous conversations that we'll have, you know, actually, you know, modeling that for what we hope and expect them to do with teachers.
Great. And I'm typing a chat note that something like sharing guiding questions with us, I think, will be beneficial to everybody who is with us.
Yes.
Jamie, I see you raised your hand.
I was testing it, sorry.
It works.
Okay, so now that's a function. If you go to the participants, at the bottom you can raise your hand if you want to interject.
Great. So in our final minutes, I'm going to scoot us ahead for a second, and let me, just as I scoot us ahead on our PowerPoint, know that one of the things that we're interested in, and we won't have a time right now to share your mid-year goal, but something that you have for yourself, we are absolutely interested in having you send that to us, as well as what might we do in our face-to-face meeting in February. So we've been jotting down notes based upon the kinds of things that you've brought up. There will be things that will be more proximate time-wise, you know, in a calendar year. So how might we best support you when we get together again in just a couple of months? Mike, do you want to hear from a couple of people about something fun that they've got planned?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oop.
Ask somebody else to do it.
So let's hear, is Ben Fernie on the line or on in our Zoom meeting?
Yes, I am.
You thought you could escape.
He was lurking. He thought he was lurking.
What's something fun you've got going on?
Well, on a personal note, going to take family, taking some days off after Christmas, and we're going to go on a ski trip as a family, which is much needed at this point. But we do have some stuff planned for January for the board appreciation. So that's kind of our plan. A lot of look, listen, and learning, Helene.
Yep, isn't that the truth for you and everybody else, I think. You know, one of the things that I'll say about this is a topic that's always of great interest is one of self-care. And hopefully each one of you will be taking a break, whether it's the last 2 weeks of December or sometime before you hit the ground running again. And I just know for myself that we've got to take that time. You know, I'm always brought back to Stephen Covey about sharpening the saw. And if you don't take time to sharpen the saw, then you're dull for everybody. So is there one more idea from somebody? Pete Peterson, I know you're on. Well, I thought I knew you were on.
Yeah, you have to unmute. You know, one of the things that just came across our email, and it was fairly insignificant but interesting at the same time, is that if you're a Primera member, you can get a discount on Fitbits right now. Oh. So I'm sending that to my entire staff today and encouraging them to get a Fitbit. And there's ways that you can set up little competitions between staff members for daily steps and things like that. So we're going to try and roll that out for second semester.
Good for you. So that ties into something fun, something that demonstrates appreciation for all. Well, we mentioned this, that all of your, all of the resources and hopefully more to add are on the website. You've all done, so some of you used the questions that we sent out prior to WASDA and helping you organize for that, but also attached to that email was a blank or semi-blank calendar of activities form about what you're taking care of both leadership-wise and management-wise. And just want you to know that the opportunity still exists for you to provide us with those calendar of activities, if you will. We would welcome those and put them on everybody's radar screen. The other thing, and it worries me that I don't see Mike Nelson on camera any longer, but
I'm still here.
Oh, good. So, you know, I think, Mike, you deserve a round of applause from all of us, because since our last face-to-face meeting, you were named the WASA Superintendent of the Year. So kudos to you. I think for everybody who participates in the Superintendent's Academy, along with Jeannie, you know, learning from somebody who is very well respected throughout our state. So bravo to you, Mike, and I'm sure everybody on the Zoom meeting applauds you as well. So bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. And then finally, here you'll get further meeting details. As we said, we absolutely want to hear from you about topics that are of import to you, but plan on seeing us at 4 Points by Sheridan, Seattle Airport, same location as last time. We are scheduled for February 26th from 8:30 to 3:30, and I'm sure we're going to be serving breakfast a bit earlier than that, and you know you'll be very well fed. And I want to say thank you ever so much for joining us. If you're on with us today but weren't able to be at the last face-to-face meeting, there's nothing holding you back from joining us in February. Jamie, any details I'm leaving out right now?
No, we'll get you housing information and all that after the holidays.
Okay, off to Mount Baker for Mary. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a terrific day and a terrific holiday.
Hold on, Jeff, 26th, Jeff. Not
It's
February 6th, 26th.
26th. Uh-oh, got a spelling mistake going on. February 26th.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day, everybody. Thanks ever so much.